Hello, everybody, and welcome to the very first speaker series event for Family Faith Every Day. My name is Traci Smith, and I am your fearless newbie host for this speaker series. Family Faith Every Day is a part of Chalice Media's mission to help families and congregations grow together closer to one another and to God through simple faith practices. And we know that most of the people that follow our work at Family Faith Every Day are either children's ministers, youth ministers, parents, those who have children in their lives. And so we're hoping to feature a number of speakers who have some kind of expertise in that realm. And today I am just so thrilled to have with us the editors of When Kids Ask Hard Questions, volumes 1 and 2, Karen Ware Jackson and Bromleigh McCleneghan. And did I say that right, Bromleigh? McCleneghan.
McCleneghan.
McCleneghan. Sorry about that. And Sarah Lund, who is one of the contributors and also the author of Blessed Youth and Blessed Are the Crazy. It's so good to have you both with us and to have you, Sarah, as a contributor. And Sarah, you are doing some heavy lifting today because you're representing a ton of fantastic contributors. And we might have to do a follow-up sometime with like as many as we can gather together. But for this event today, we just wanted to have a sampling, kind of leave you wanting more. So in our little like pregame chat, the four of us were talking about what kind of a conversation we wanted to have. And we sort of landed on a little bit of an informal conversation out of our own experience. All of us are parents. All of us have hard conversations in our own households that both inform our work and our ministry. So I would love to just start out by having each of us introduce ourselves as briefly or as lengthily as we want to. I'll go ahead and get started. As I mentioned, Traci Smith. I'm a ordained minister in the Presbyterian Church USA, right now serving as the director of Family Faith Every Day. My kind of professional focus is faith practice in the home. So what are the things that we do to share our faith in our families? And in terms of who's in my house, my husband, Elias Cavarcas, and I have 3 children together. My husband has 2 grown children from his first marriage, but our 3 children together are 13 years old, 12 years old, and 7 years old. They're 2 boys and a girl. And definitely, I feel like their whole lives have been asking hard questions, but now in that middle school age is lots of hard questions. So I think I'm going to just pass the football over to you, Karen, if that's okay, and then maybe to Bromley, and then finally to Sarah.
Yeah, I'm Karen Ware Jackson. I am also a pastor in the Presbyterian Church USA. I'm the pastor of First Presbyterian Church in Greenville, North Carolina, which is Eastern North Carolina, east of Raleigh. Um, I also do a few other things professionally as well. I have 2 kids. It's so interesting. I've been thinking about how when we wrote and edited these books, our kids were all or mostly like in elementary school, and now they're more older. So I have a 6th grader and an 8th grader, 11, and my daughter turned 14 last Friday. So it's a real joy to see how conversations and being a part of conversations and trying to create an atmosphere of questioning and talking when they're younger grows with kids and really puts them in a place of feeling comfortable to speak. And it's so interesting now. I'm in a place where my kids are telling me, remember that time when I asked this question and you said this? And I'm like, no, I don't remember that, but I'm really glad that made such an impact on you. Yeah, it's a blessing to be here with you all today.
Thanks, Karen.
Thank you, Karen. I'm Bromleigh McCleneghan. I am ordained in the United Methodist Church, though I have served, I believe now, more years in the United Church of Christ, though I retain my ordination in the United Methodist Church. I serve as the coordinating minister at the United Church of Gainesville. At the moment, I will be leaving here at the end of December, so we're sort of in the home stretch of our life together and discerning some new things. My household includes my husband Josh, who is a teacher and has an essay in our first When Kids Ask book, and 3 children who, yes, once upon a time were young and now feel very old. A senior in high school, freshman in high school, and a 9-year-old, all girls. Yeah, I don't know. Yes, I do some other things too. And I am, anyway, I've loved working on these projects because I think that we have creating creating spaces for our kids to ask these questions and letting them know that we are trusted and authoritative, but mostly trusted to love them is such an important thing. So.
Mhm. Thank you, Bromleigh.
Hi, I'm Sarah Griffith Lund, and I'm ordained in the Christian Church Disciples of Christ tradition and have served in the United Church of Christ. I live in Indianapolis, Indiana, where I am a local church pastor of First Congregational. And I also have a ministry to our denomination, the wider church. I'm on the national staff of the UCC out of Cleveland as the Minister for Disabilities and Mental Health Justice. So I love partnering with congregations and faith leaders for how to make your congregations more inclusive for mental health and disabilities. So that's a passion I have. I'm a family advocate. So in my family, there's lots of disabilities, both visible and invisible. I grew up in a family with disabilities, and my son is now 15 in 9th grade. And my husband, for 18 years, we have 2 dogs, and so we are a big dog family. But I would add about having hard conversations is that they get, in my experience, less hard. And I think because we had hard conversations when my son was younger, so I'm thinking like 10 years ago at the age of 5, really started in age appropriate ways to talk about hard things. What's so beautiful is the trust and the bond that that created, so that now as he's older and having different questions, he trusts me with the questions on his heart. And that's such a privilege as a mom and as a parent and as a person of faith to connect to my own child in that way. So thank you all for being part of this movement, really, to have hard conversations. It's raising up children and next generation that are going to be incredible parents themselves and leaders, and having hard conversations with others in a way that will bless them. So thank you.
Oh, thank you, Sarah. And thank you for that reminder that starting when kids are little might help pave the way for when children are older. I also want to say, if you have older children or you've been working with children for a long time and this is new to you, never fear. It's never too late to get started. These things I've had in my own experience, feeling that feeling of being behind on some of these things, and then also just sort of like plugging my nose and jumping in and feeling like actually the water wasn't as cold as I thought it was going to be. So I think, Sarah, if it's okay for us to start with you, like I was saying at the beginning, we wanted to feature one of our contributors. Sarah's focus is on mental health and children. And I'm wondering if you could speak a little bit to the specific challenges around this topic for parents and children, maybe some of the anxieties that parents feel. And then if you can, I hope this isn't too tall of an order, but if you could give us any practical advice for how to approach the topic of mental health and children and youth specifically, we'd love to hear your wisdom.
Oh, thank you. So the first thing is we all have mental health, right? Mental health is physical health. And I like to invite us all to think about how we care for our children's health, and how just common it is that we would chat about, oh, what dentist do you see? What pediatrician do you see? What therapist do you see? And just that's part of it, right? Have you had your kid's first dental checkup? Like, remember that first teeth cleaning? I don't know. It's always like a milestone. And then every 6 months, we help our kids get screened for cavities, and you're trying to prevent cavities. So I love to have us think about mental health the same way. What if I dream of a world where it's not a hard conversation at all? It's, every 6 months we're going for our mental health checkup. As Patrick Kennedy said, a checkup from the neck up. Does my child have a brain cavity? Right? The beginning signs of plaque buildup, of depression, anxiety. There's so much hope when we think about prevention. So I'm really excited about, having these conversations normalized and just part of how we think about the health and well-being of our whole family. So I'm curious for our friends connecting to this conversation. Does your loved one, your child, have a mental health therapist? Is that part of the insurance opportunities you have? Does your community have sliding scale? We got our son into play therapy as a little one, and the kind of therapy that's been a best fit for him has changed over the years. But just for him, I think it's so cool we can help our children see that your mental health is part of your physical health. And then they can have someone they go to if there's a crisis. You know, if something's building up, they're much more connected because, as you all know, there's often a long wait list to even get connected to a care provider. And then we can also normalize taking medications. You know, we have to take medications if there's other kinds of physical illness. You know, we're always checking our kids' forehead. Do you have a fever? You know, do you have a runny nose? The symptoms of physical illness we're all aware of. What if we're all aware of symptoms of mental health? And so that's the thing I would encourage us all to get really familiar with for your child. What is anxiety? Not just feel like, but look like. Often physical symptoms of our mental health. As a kid myself, I had chronic stomach aches. And my mom took me to a pediatrician, and they're like, well, there's nothing wrong with her. She didn't think to take me to a mental health professional to realize that the stomach aches were connected to my mental health. So that's the advice I would really give to folks is go ahead and connect your child to a mental health care provider to do an intake, to do a baseline assessment so that you can monitor as they grow and develop what's evolving and be proactive and not just about treating a mental health symptom, but how to build their resilience and what will help your child flourish. And so there's lots of hope in that space. And then just the other thing I would say, Tracy, is we are caregivers. We are people who love and pour into others all the time. And there's a lot of guilt about using any kind of resource, time, money for ourselves. But in the research I've done about children mental health, it's really the mental health care of the provider that creates an environment for the flourishing of our little ones because they are regulating themselves based on how we are regulated. So for all those listening, here is your, sign from God. You are worth it. You are so worth it. And loving your own brain, getting your own brain scanned for brain cavities will bear fruit in your child and the children that you love. So, do you have a therapist? I wonder if you do. Have you seen them lately? If you don't have a therapist, you deserve it. And it's a great investment for the long run. And it's a way to love your family by taking care of yourself.
What a beautiful word for parents and professionals in ministry of all kinds, right? It's a message that I often share with families and parents and church leaders as well. When we talk about faith practice, going to therapy is a very profound faith practice. And caring for your own marriage, your own personal, mental, and physical health is such a gift to your family. And when you were talking, Sarah, I was just mindful of all of the ministry leaders on this call and watching the video. That could be such a great gift to the families in your care to reach out to the mental health providers in your community, find out what insurance they take, what sort of sliding scale they have. Many of us, I know, in our offices have lists of resources, and to normalize that for parents and children. I think what you made me think of is that I think there is, of course, so much stigma still around mental health. And sometimes I think folks might still have this kind of older view that if you have to go to therapy, you must be somehow broken instead of thinking of it as a preventative checkup. So I love that image of the dentist and the cleaning. I wanted to pivot a little bit to the book more generally. And I was wondering, Karen and Bromleigh, I think I saw earlier that you had copies. I was wondering if one of you would be willing. Now, this is, I'm sure, for the editors, like asking you to pick your favorite, like your favorite shoe
child.
out of your collection of shoes, or your favorite flower in your garden. But if you could help us just to know, kind of like when we talk about hard questions, what are some of the topics that are covered in the 2 volumes of When Kids Ask Hard Questions?
Well, I only have the second one with me, so you should start, Karen.
Okay, that's good. Karen can do volume 1,
Okay.
Bromleigh can do volume 2.
Great. Okay, so that's great, because I was actually in volume 1, we started out with a lot of questions on things like building friendships. There's a great essay in here about navigating gender identity. There's great questions on body image and sex. There's multiple essays on mental illness and suicide, on friends and families and relationships. A couple of my very favorite essays in this volume are on grief. There are 3 essays here on grief, on 2 written by people, women who had lost a spouse, and 1 from a couple, and talking about a pregnancy loss, that I think are really moving and really helpful, and to help children of different ages and thinking a lot about grief, which I think is something that, even if it's not the loss of a parent or the loss of a sibling, although it can be, this children experience loss. And this is, and a lot of times I think we find that in our congregations, and when we're talking to other parents, they feel they don't feel equipped to know what to say or how to help their children. And I think so often it's because nobody was there to help them through their first early losses. And so I think those are really some of my very favorite essays in this. There's a section on fear and courage, and on race, and on bullying, gun violence. There are some questions just on about faith and forgiveness and reconciliation and loving your neighbor, having doubts and things like that. And there's a great section on money and economics, which I think we often forget how we don't forget how much it affects our lives, but I think we are less equipped to talk to our children about it. So those are just really lovely practical work there. So that's volume 1.
Thank you, Karen. Volume 2, Bromleigh.
Volume 2. I was rereading the introduction. So in the first book, Karen did the introduction and I did the sort of conclusion, and then we flipped it in the second one. And I had sort of forgotten with the second book that when we initially had planned it, we were thinking of some softer topics, like we talked about gun violence and suicide and grief and, truly hard questions. So and then the pandemic hit, and we had the summer with the murder of George Floyd and some other, a number of other upticks in racial violence. And so we were like, oh, actually, there are just some more hard questions to answer. So, and folks really, I'm so proud of this volume too, not least because folks were writing a lot of the time while they were shut down still. And so the fact that anyone managed to, feed themselves and their children and do any amount of work plus reflective theological writing is deeply impressive to me. The first set of essays is around identity, questions of identity, both in terms of we have folks writing with physical differences, developmental differences, someone writing out of the trans non-binary experience, talking about unique learners. I mean, all sorts of things there. And then biracial kids too, both and is the title of that essay. We talked, there's a whole section on big feelings, which was sort of around mental health, and folks talking about their own experiences of seeking belonging, seeking, helping to teach kids to recognize healthy intimacy, and Catherine Willis Pershey, who's and Chalice and other press authors, her title is Existential Angst with the Elementary School Set. I mean, so really looking at some of those things, then again, family matters around who is family. Shonda Jha, who we asked to be here today too, and is in a class. So she went back to do her PhD. So, but she talks about being an only child, and how that shaped her and sort of led her to ask questions about family of choice, and also being okay being alone. One of my, there are several favorites in the everyday choices section. Suzanne Parker Miller talks about education and equity, and public education in the guise of why do I have to go to school? Another favorite is When You Care About the Environment but Also Love to Shop by Sari Fordham. And she has a wonderful newsletter as well, but called, I don't remember, but Keeping It Cool maybe. But she writes regularly about environmental practice in just really wonderful and, you know, non-shaming, very empowering sort of ways, but also deeply aware of what's at stake. And then, you know, what is and what might be. We talked about, we have one about sort of police violence and broken community, interrupting fear of the other, who is my enemy, talking about war and peace. Sarah Nade Fisher, I believe, is a disciple maybe too. She has done some military chaplaincy. Ecosystem ethics. This one of the another disciple pastor, Victoria Wick, wrote Why Do Bad Things Happen to Innocent People? She and I taught OWL, the UCC, Our Whole Lives, lifespan sexuality curriculum together with real littles, like the K1 curriculum. And anyway, and that was a question, you know, why do bad things happen? Like, why would someone want to bad touch you, or unsafe touch you? And so she really tackles it in a beautiful and thoughtful way. So I mean, there's so much good stuff here. So there's no picking favorites.
Yes, definitely no picking favorites. And thank you for that sort of comprehensive view. I think one of the things that's so beautiful about these two volumes is the sort of luxury of being able to have people focus on one essay on their area of expertise, with some exception, right? But you were able to find people that many of them could have written an entire volume on their topic. And so it's truly a volume where you're getting sort of the best of the best thoughts of a lot of different people. And I saw that somebody put a question in the chat, like, is there a way to get a list of all of the titles? And the titles that are being mentioned, friends, are chapter headings of When Kids Ask Hard Questions, volumes 1 and 2. And Kaylee, if you don't mind sticking that the book cover up for everybody to take a look, because that's one of the things that we are here to show off, right? And when we were sort of introducing the books a few minutes ago, I think it was you, Karen, said something about putting it together, and it just reminded me of this truth that I think is lots of writers can relate to, which is that sometimes we write the book we are needing it to read. And I wonder if that is true of you, if putting the books together, putting the volumes together, if it helped to say, okay, which topics do I really want to talk about with my kids? And then to make the list from there. But I'm wondering, if we could talk about any common threads that weave through the essays, not so much in terms of the topics themselves specifically, because I think folks will go ahead and read those, the ones that are of interest, but more along the lines of how do we approach hard questions generally? How should we think about our role as parents? What are we trying to do? What kind of environment are we supposed to shape? How do you think about hard questions more generally? What do you think, Karen?
Yeah, that's really you're right. We're writing we're writing the book that we need, right? And so that was a big part of what we were trying to do is help equip parents, encourage them to say, um, what your what you say to your children matters. They are listening,
Right.
and really and truly, you are equipped. You are the person who loves them, who knows them. There are always ways we could know our children better, but there are also ways that you know them that even they probably don't know themselves. And so trying to encourage parents to say, maybe you don't have, a big theological education, or you're not sure what Bible story to think of when your kid asks this question. That's okay. You can say what you believe. You can say, I don't know. You can also say, I'm not sure. Let me think about that, and let's come back to it. And really, that this idea that you need to go to an expert, you have to refer your child to like a pastor or something like that if they ask a hard question that you'd like to, speak into faith-wise. That's not true. What you believe is most important to them, and that's what they want to hear. And so that's what we were trying to do with the essays, is encourage our folks that were writing to speak about their own beliefs, and to bring in some faith tradition, but also to offer some, because they were topical, to offer some practical resources as well, so that to really help parents figure out, not telling them this is how you should respond to your child about this question, but here are some ways that you can think about it so that you can have develop your own response.
I love that. And I think you're so right, Karen, that it's not about having the exact perfect thing to say or the exact answer, but that being in conversation. And something that I noticed with my own kids a while back is that many times when they asked me a question about something, it was because they wanted to tell me what they think about it. So like, asking me, so mom, what's your favorite fast food restaurant? I used to think they wanted me to tell them. But then I noticed like they would listen quickly to my answer and then tell me what their thing was. And so I offer that as a practical thought, maybe, that to wonder what's behind the asking of the question, right? Well, tell me more about why you're thinking about X, Y, or Z, or even before you offer your own opinion. Well, what do you think about that? Tell me more about your question. And see, I mean, that's sort of like tried and true advice around birds and bees conversation, right? To answer the question asked. And I think that it applies to more broadly to some of these other questions, because it can be hard to figure out what the nugget of it really is, I guess. Yeah. Any other thoughts?
I think,
Yeah.
yeah, the other, I think there was the thing that made this book sort of different and important to me was that I feel like when I was growing up, there was a sense that good parenting was having like an answer to everything. And so there's something really, really critically important in saying, if you don't know, maybe reflect on it some more, like, and I think that's so important. I think that, the idea that curiosity and reflection are signs of strength and make you more trustworthy. I mean, it's like,
Yeah.
it's like the idea that seeking mental health support, you know, makes you weak, you know, or something, you know, but it's like, no, this is actually like a great gift. And it is, you know, it is wise and wonderful to pursue if you can. So I think that too, that the first thing that you want to say isn't always needed. You know, your kids will give you time for a more reflective answer, you know, if you don't put them off forever, you know.
I love that. I love that idea of time. I think thinking about these questions in terms of a longer view is really essential as well, both in terms of rolling out information over time, right? It's not that we have to have one conversation about why do I have to go to school and that's it. We've talked about it. I've downloaded everything I want to download and then we're done. It's a continuing conversation that changes with different circumstances and different ages and stages. And I think particularly right now at the time of this recording, we're right in the middle of kind of trying to figure out what is happening in our country with polarization and voting. And it's right after the election. There's a lot of talk about what does it mean to have dialogue? What does it mean to listen to one another? What does it mean to respect one another? So I also wonder what it looks like in families to model either a changing of one's mind or an openness to alternative views. And what does it look like if you get into a place where maybe your child has a view or a belief that feels foreign to you? Cindy Wang Brandt, who writes a beautiful newsletter, she's the author of a book called Parenting Forward. She's put out a newsletter talking about the number of Gen Zs that really have very different political beliefs than their parents and what's going on there, and offering her thoughts around that. But I'm curious if either of you have either stories or experience or thoughts around what to do if you get into a situation where your kids have views that you don't want them to adopt, or they're adopting a theological belief that's not the belief of your household or your church. What would you say about that?
Well, my two oldest were confirmed in our tradition. We baptize as infants and then confirm in middle school roughly. And but our church is in the UCC, but is deeply non-doctrinal, like so much non-doctrinal. And all three of them, I think, really believe all sorts of things. You know, like one of them has an altar to Aphrodite in her room and not a cross on the wall. You know, I got them, we were in Europe this summer and I bought them all like matching silver necklaces and they're doves, right? Like the Holy Spirit, you know, and I was like, they're for peace. So they'll wear those. Anyway, but I mean, I'm like many meanings, so many meanings. But to me, the name that they have for God is something that may change over time. And if I can keep bearing witness to my faith and, you know, in God through Christ, you know, I mean, that like and we have a trustworthy relationship that's based on love, you know, like they will hear me and as that speaks to them, it will or it won't, you know, I hope, but I can't push. If, however, the youngest, we all sort of agree, was raised on YouTube, right? And she, I mean, more than anything else, the poor baby, you know, but there's a ton of stuff on YouTube, right? I mean, not only the unboxing of toys and grown women speaking in baby voices, but also like lots of misogyny and white nationalism, you know, and that I'm much more I'm much more involved in wanting to shape their language and experience, you know, with some things where I feel like it'll, you know, we're heading in the right direction together, fine. But when there are things that are clearly opposed to who I believe God is or who I want them to be in the world, like I'm very explicit about that. And we talk about those things a lot. So I think it really, I think it depends. And I do think that some parents have not I think sometimes we like think that creating a space of openness means that we don't have any content sort of that we convey. And I really do think that it's a both and. I don't know. Karen, what do you think?
I have to laugh. I love that you said your youngest was raised on YouTube. Y'all, Josh Hammond, Bromleigh's beloved spouse, wrote the essay on the life-changing magic of setting limits, technology. Josh is a middle school teacher, yes?
Yeah, now
He
he
was,
has
at least when he wrote this, I think.
Mhm.
So
Okay.
I'm like,
In his
hey, I'm
defense,
like,
pandemic, all bets are off.
I know, I know, I know. It was the thing. And like, so I feel that as well, especially with my 11-year-old. He will watch like Bible things on YouTube, and which honestly scare me so much more than almost anything else he watches. I'm like, what does that say? And that's the part that I'm like, I need to, mostly what he watches is like just like straight Bible story-y things, or like, and this stuff doesn't bother me as much, like sort of like biblical conspiracy theory-ish things, which, I'm like, all right, well, it's not, it hasn't expressed anything wildly problematic. But it's interesting, like just how much content they have the ability to get, and what is going into their brains that is coloring their perspective on things that we don't know. And so I guess I say that, of course, we're all trying to set the limits on technology, and that's not exactly what I'm talking about here. I think I'm more thinking about, I want them to hear what I think too. I want them to hear a faith perspective, from me. I want them to hear a faith perspective from, other adults from our church or in their lives that love them and that, have a relationship with them. Because I do think even in the midst of all of that, that and we're also trying to teach them how to judge sources, and that you can't always believe everything you hear on the internet. And so I want them to, they may hear it, but I want them to trust more, or at least to place weight upon the perspectives of, their beloveds and people who love them more so than, the constant YouTube stream.
That's
And
such a
Traci, you asked about threads, and I think that's one of them, which is sort of which is sort of what is trustworthy, and how and who, and how do we know what's true, and I think that's sort of, those are big theological questions, but and they may have multiple answers, but I think, like, yeah, bringing those questions, like kids have those questions, and so engaging them in that is really great. And what I love too is that there's just, in having multiple voices, is that there are many trustworthy sources. Not every adult is a trustworthy source, but there are many. Let's help you find them.
Yeah, I mean, I think what you might be both getting at from a different angle is this idea of modeling what it means to ask questions, and to ask good questions, and to receive information with a critical eye, and to, kind of change our views over time, as we were saying a few minutes ago. And I think, an awareness of the developmental stages at which children are, the stages of faith, stages of psychological development, social development, and trying to put those in their proper place when we're talking about questions is really important too. Like it's actually so developmentally appropriate for adolescents to push back on absolutely everything, and to opt for an opposite view, no matter what that view is. And then, of course, like brain science now is telling us that adolescence is like into like the mid-20s sometimes, right? So to realize like, oh, there is a longer view, and to be patient and to continue to stay connected. I think I heard both of you say, you know, what does it mean to be a trusted source for children so that they can keep coming back, but then also to have a very clear boundaried sense of your own beliefs, right? And maybe saying like, this, you might feel differently about this, but these are my clear kind of answers or beliefs, and I'm not not interested in changing them, or maybe I am, right? And maybe our views grow and change with our children. That's a part of my own research right now, is how do parents and children influence each other's faith reciprocally? And there's a lot of ways that we could go around that. I'm I'm surprised, but also not surprised at how quickly our time has gone. Like, I feel like we could have a super conversation of multiple hours, but I did want to get to the one question that I think was a really good one in here, and then also invite you to grab your questions. I also did want to mention that we didn't lose Sarah. She had previously told us that she had another engagement that she had to get to, so we're not panicking about her having to sneak out. But the question that I saw from Carrie, which I think is a great one, is how do we use these resources with parents? So if we, like many of the people watching today, are congregational leaders, and we have the opportunity to push this resource out in our congregations, like, what's a way to do that? I'm going to offer my thought, but then just so that you can be thinking, one of my questions is there a study guide, or do you have any resources to point people to for that? But one of my thoughts is to simply gather parents together with coffee or snacks or whatever, and come up with 5 questions. Pretend that you're me and you have Bromleigh and Karen. Maybe you want to show part of this, I don't know, a clip of it. But what questions do you want to ask them? Just even opening up and asking them to tell it their own stories. What questions have your kids been asking? How does it go? How does it feel when they ask hard questions? What questions do you find most uncomfortable to answer? How did your parents tackle your hard questions? Just opening up a space like that, I think, with a clear beginning, middle, and end time, right? So say it's just going to be an hour, we're going to have coffee, nobody's going to be forced to speak, but to open up that space is worth its time. That time will be multiplied and returned to you tenfold, I think, just to give them the space for them to talk. Do you two have other ways that people can use this in groups of parents in their congregations?
So there's a study guide for volume 1. I just put the link to it, but it's also on the link on the Chalice link.
Perfect.
It's gonna sound like silly right now. I remember there being a study guide for volume 2, but I'm having trouble finding it. So I will admit that was, as Bromleigh mentioned, that was a really intense. We put that together in 2020 and 2021, and we were all just, I mean, by the grace of God, what I can tell you is that Jesus wanted this book to exist.
Yeah.
And the Holy Spirit made it happen, because it was really intense. So it could be just that in my brain I thought it happened and it didn't, but it also could be hiding somewhere. I have used it in my congregation. We bought the books, and we had a parent Sunday school class, and we had them look through and just pick topics that they wanted to explore. And then we just, however many weeks we wanted to do it, we just picked those topics, and we offered them the opportunity to read those essays, and said, of course, if you haven't read the essay, you can come, but we'll talk about it. And so, I mean, all the essays have further, they offer like a thoughtful writing on the topic, but then they also offer a practical section on what's called crafting the conversation, and with like tips and resources and questions and things like that. And then they all offer a further exploration, which like gives you this even an additional list of resources on the topic. So we did that, and it was nice, and we enjoyed it. There are so many options that you could do that with either book. And
I love
they
that.
both would be, it's simple, it's easy, you're talking about what people want to talk.
Absolutely. I love the idea of making it bite-sized. I think that's an important thing to think about if you're curating resources for parents. If you're doing it in a newsletter or in some sort of social media post, you could do an entire series of hard questions with just simple bite-sized things. Again, to model this idea that you're having these hard conversations over time, continuously. It's not something, it's like little snacks of it, not feasting on it once in a while, right? So sort of dripping the content out, I think is a wise strategy. How about you, Bromley? Do you have
I
any
think
thoughts?
two things that occurred to me just listening to both of you was, if you're offering programming in the church, having it at a time where there is available childcare or children's activities, I think is really vital. We One of the things that this church does is they offer, like our kids programming during the worship service, which, everybody has, we have feelings about. They're in the service and then they go out for a while. But then there's time afterward that's just like childcare, and for up to 5th grade. And so like the parents will stay for seminars or other groups on Sunday mornings, and then there's childcare at other points during the week. And that's really, if you can figure out how to swing that, that's great. The other thing that I have found really lovely is the Zoom conversation. I think that is one learning uh, of the pandemic, is that we really can build relationships with real people over screens. I never want to leave my house or put on real pants after like 8 o'clock, but I will 100% jump on a Zoom to talk with other parents about stuff after I've like put the kids to bed, or or I'll start my day that way, or I can do it over my lunch hour, whatever. And so I think that that's a nice accessible way to do that. And I mean, that's how friends at great distances keep up. Like that's been a really that's a resource. I think
I love that.
we often prefer to be in person unless you are exhausted and touched out and don't want real pants on. So I think that
I love that, giving parents the opportunity to gather virtually or gather in those kind of confetti moments of life, right? When they're really busy. I think the other thing that I've been thinking about a lot with regard to parents, empowering parents in the church, is for faith leaders, pastors, children's ministry, youth leaders to think of themselves as coaches. If you've ever studied a coach approach or just kind of dipped your toes into that water, to ask parents those kinds of questions, right? The kind of coach approach model assumes that the parents in your care have everything that they need, but they might need some help talking it through or thinking it through. So a lot of times I think we have a teachery approach as a teacher in ASL, like just taking what's in your brain and putting it out. But really, I think more so than being taught, need a space where they can bounce ideas off or have their thoughts and feelings kind of reflected back to them, maybe with some of the learning of the book. So, I mean, even a simple like, hey, we're all going to flip through the book as much as we have time for, and then come back. And the opening question could be, what did you think? See, just like this conversation, right? We didn't have a real detailed plan, but the Spirit just sort of like wound it all around. I'm going to say publicly for the record that the study guide is in the comments section below on YouTube for the recording purposes. If you're here with us live, you see it in the chat. Thank you to you both so much for being here for this conversation. I definitely feel like, just as there is a When Kids Ask Hard Questions volumes 1 and 2, we're going to have a Talking to Parents About Hard Questions conversations 1 and 2, or 3, 4, and 5. So grateful to both of you for your expertise, your wisdom, your curation of these resources, and your witness in a kind of challenging world in which we live. Are there plans for a volume 3 of When Kids Ask Hard Questions? Not yet.
Yeah, no, not as far as I am aware.
You would probably be the
If
first to
the
know, right?
demand, we
We're
already
like,
know.
buy volume 2 and we'll make a volume 3.
That's right. That's right.
Yes.
Yeah, that is how we know there's need.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, well, I mean, there are endless topics. I mean, that's the truth, is that there are endless topics. Of course, there would always be a need, but the thing that I kept thinking of, the one thing I didn't get to say just on in terms of helping kids and helping parents like determine your views on things, I'm always telling people, keep your heart and your brain turned on. You know, whenever you hear something, whenever you read something from the pulpit, in the Bible, in a book, on YouTube, keep your heart and your brain on. And if something is pinging in your brain as being new or confusing and different than what you think or believe, it doesn't mean, like, that's when you start asking those questions and exploring. Or if like, oh wait, that makes sense in my brain, but your heart is going like, that seems wrong. That's the same thing. That's when you question it and you think about it. And those are the points of exploration. And those are the points when you may grow. Your heart might change your brain, or your brain might change your heart, or the two might come to a new understanding together. Or you may take a source that was trusted and say, wow, I trust you for these things, but this thing that you told me, I don't believe. That's okay.
Yeah.
A great way to end.
As I say, I was rereading the intro to the second edition this morning, and just sort of noting like all the things that our kids had seen that I hadn't seen. You know, I mean, and I don't know, they are so aware. And I am glad for that. But it also means that we have lots to talk about, because there are things that don't make sense. There are things that are not good in the world, and they see that and they know that. And I think offering them, again, the assurance that there are people who love them and listen to them and care about their questions and their selves is it. I mean, sometimes it doesn't feel like all the assurance that I want to offer them. I want to tell them everything will be wonderful, always, forever. But the idea that we are together, we are not alone, that love is powerful, that these are good things for them to have. We talked, I know we got to end. We talked at the, when we were first titling the first one, we didn't want it, there was sort of this sense of something around hard questions, but that there would be pushback, like, well, why would you talk about hard things with kids in the first place? And so, I mean, so the title came very much from the idea that, like, you can't escape hard questions. Children will ask them, so here's some food for thought for when they come. And I think that, again, that's that sort of openness and engagement to the world that's a renewed strand of faithful parenting that is hopefully allowing us to do better by our kids than maybe we were done by. It's not a good construction, but you know what I mean.
Yes, well, thank you. That's a great way to end, right? Just the reminder that it's not if, but when. Yeah, kids always ask hard questions, as do parents. It's not something to fear, but something to kind of approach with a resource and with the support. And I think I would like to end by just saying thank you to all of you who are on this call and watching this video for your faithfulness in empowering parents to step outside maybe of their comfort zones and be guardians of these conversations. Thank you to all of you for holding and receiving all the questions that all the parents in your care bring to you, because you end up fielding a lot of those and fielding the questions. And maybe one quick last minute thing, how can folks get in touch with you if they want to hear more? Of course, we can send you to the book again, When Kids Ask Hard Questions, Volume 1 and 2, available at chalicepress.com or wherever books are sold. You can get in touch with me through my website, which is tracysmith.com. I would love to hear from you, any thoughts or questions. How about you, Bromleigh and Karen? Is there any place where people can go to learn more about what you both are all about?
Karen's so good. She put her website in the chat, but I'll do mine first. My email is bromleighm at the Gmails, and I'm on Instagram also at bromleighm. So those are probably good spots.
Perfect. And then Karen,
Yes,
you
I
are
put my website, www.karenwarejackson.com. You can reach me there.
excellent.
I think you can contact me. It goes to my Gmail too. So
Excellent. We'll put those links down below in the comments for those of you that are watching us on YouTube. Friends, thank you again so much for being here, and we hope that you continue to follow Family Faith every day for more speaker series events coming to you sporadically and also in surprise ways. We can't wait to share all of the other speakers in our series with you over the next few years. Thanks again. Bye-bye.
bye.